not our first cross-platform community, but originally we had a project called Hoppou Foundation East for CVR,
Mhm.
but we depreciated that a long time ago. Abyssal Order is our way to kind of support Massive Loop. That's the alternative platform. We wanted a way that we could expand our influence in a way to like.
Welcome to Metaverse Degen. I'm Lion.
I'm Old Man Raptor, and we got one hell of a guest, and that is...
Hi, I'm Blazecreek.
Oh, thank you very much for joining us, Blazecreek. It's a pleasure to have you and get to meet you. So thank you. Oh,
Yeah, thanks for showing up.
indeed.
Thanks for having me.
Did he, Lion, did he bring cookies and milk?
No one brought
I'm
cookies
hungry.
and milk, Raptor. You should have eaten beforehand.
Fuck. Yeah, well, that's
Anyway,
gotcha.
what is it you're most known for here in VRChat? How'd you get started with that and into VRChat to begin with?
I founded a couple of communities, 4 of them. How'd I get into VR chat? I don't know. I kind of just figured out that VR existed in like the late 2010s, and then I heard VR chat existed. So I got on desktop, and then eventually I got a VR headset. This is like 2017 to 2018. And then what was the other question? I forgot.
Oh, what are you most known for? How did you get started, and what got you into VRChat? So you kind of answered all of them. So what are the
Nice.
what are the communities that you founded since you entered, and what was your first days in VRChat like?
I founded the Hoppou Foundation. It's a Happou rating community. We do events, a bunch of different stuff. I founded Abyssal Police Division. We do police roleplay. Uh, Typical like it gave VR chat events like karaoke, that kind of stuff. Fellowship of Null does a bunch of different stuff. They do, I guess you could say, more cultish roleplay. Happous are kind of known as cultish in general. So they took it to the next level, I guess you could say. And then we have another one called Abyssal Order, which is pretty heavily work in progress. It's for a different platform, but I made a bunch of groups and I drank a whole bunch of Monster before coming on, so I am very shaky. If I am very shaky,
He's over here. Oh my God, this boy's got to be going, son of a bitch. I need more fuel. And we're going, okay.
So, first of all, make sure you drink some water, man. Don't just drink straight energy drinks.
My God.
I got triple.
If he starts to bounce up and down the goddamn stick, he starts bouncing up and down the stairs just to try to burn himself, so he comes down to a minimum thing. I'm just going to try to count. I'll probably lose after 20.
So what was the first community you founded then from the Knolls, both Abyssals, and Hoppou Foundation? What was the first?
Happou Foundation was the first. It was founded April 1st, 2020. I'd already been in VR chat for a long time at that point, but I wanted to do Happou stuff. There wasn't too many Happou things going on at the time. Nobody was really raiding. Nobody was really doing what I like to do. So I made the Happou Foundation kind of as a way to continue on the culture that I was brought into in the early years of VR chat. And, well, I like doing Happou stuff. We kidnap people and turn them into us. It's pretty great.
Oh, shit. Son of a bitch. I'm out of here. Well, folks, sorry, I got to leave because I am already small enough, and then me being a Hoppou. Because what's funny is I have one. That's what's sad.
You don't have a choice, right?
I have one. Huh?
You don't have a choice.
Oh, I'm in trouble.
What is...
I got a question for you, Blind.
Shoot.
I don't want to shoot you.
No, that's
You want me to leave now?
No, that's the question.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm going to ask the question. When you first came knowing that you've been in VR for as long as you have, what's the weirdest thing you ever saw in VR and had to run from
Can't
it?
say that. Can't say any of that. Not on camera, not for the internet. I don't think that's allowed on YouTube. VR is a weird place.
Okay, that's good enough. That's all we needed to know. Okay. Works for me. I ain't going to twist his arm. No, and we've seen a lot of weird stuff in here, me and Lion, since we've been here.
Yep.
Oh boy,
So,
have
But
we ever?
question for you: what is a happou to begin with, and how do? Yeah, what is a happou?
so Hapu refers to both the avatar and, well, people. It refers to a lot of different stuff. But generally, when somebody says Hapu, they're thinking of the avatar. The avatar Hapu is originally Northern Princess, a character from Kantai Collection or Kankle.
Hmm.
But she's one of the bad guys, not in the anime, but in the games. So we kind of I don't even know how I would begin to explain the origins of Hapu in a timely manner, to be fair, but it's a character that a bunch of people liked, and it kind of evolved into something a little wild and crazy in comparison to its beginnings. But
Hmm.
yeah, Hapu is a lot of things. It's a character, it's an avatar, it's also what people used to refer to themselves as, like as a group of people. It's kind of a lot of stuff.
Hmm. Okay. So, what is the happou culture in VR chat, and from the game that it originates from into VR chat? What led to its meanings and origins to what people know them as now?
That's a little hard to answer, to be fair, because Hapus as an idea and as a community have always grown through individuals or different groups. There wasn't a single, like, herald, if you will, that
Hmm.
kind of saw Hapus through the entire time. The original Hapu community is Project H, which they're still technically around, but they don't really do too much. But no one community has been dominant for the entire time that Hapus have been around. No one person or entity can necessarily claim them. So how Hapus work, how like what we do, it varies group to group.
Hmm.
It's all based on the same, I guess you could say, baselines. We all have the same general standpoints that we're founded upon, but for the most part, all of the communities except for the ones that I run are relatively different. But as for the beginnings of Hapu, since Hapu's originally based on Northern Princess, I can't say 100% how the folks over at Project H came to the conclusion for everything that they did involving Hapu's name and so on. But over the years, it evolved through different communities. Different people influenced the overall VR chat culture. Like Hapus, they poi. For the longest time, they didn't speak. They didn't poi. They didn't have any way to make noise or anything. They were silent hunters.
Hmm.
But over time, people attached stuff like poing, which is actually from another character in Kantai. It's from Yudachi, but yeah, it's something that the community like attached to it, and over time various aspects like that kind of grew Hapu and Abyssals uh, into their own thing.
Hmm. Okay. So you mentioned the original foundations of happous. May I ask what they are?
Like what do you mean? Because there's
Well,
a lot of communities.
no, no, not like foundations, as in like rules to go by, I guess is a way to put it.
So Hapus, generally speaking, I guess the best way to put it is we all generally use the same bases. We all look very similar.
Hmm.
Abyssals and Hapus, they're kind of interchangeable, to be entirely fair.
Hmm.
But the main core tenet would be staring. Nowadays, I would say obviously poing, but how we do what we do, rating, how we conduct ourselves generally speaking, a lot of the baselines across the communities are relatively similar. Like rating is essentially a very evolved version of the early days of hunting or hunts, which is a variation of, I guess you could say, just early hop rating to simplify it. But yeah, all of the communities are founded on the same general baselines of, okay, these are Hapu avatars. We like these features. These are, what we consider to be a Hapu. And we go out, we stare, we convert people into our communities, and that's how we recruit people. It's how we make new friends, and it's how we spread our culture and what we do. But there are some other similar, I guess you could say, baselines, but that's a little too specific to get into because every community is pretty different. Like, you could think of them as almost their own little cults in a way. They all have their own interpretations.
Hmm. So what happens during a Hapu raid normally?
Well, I don't want to get yelled at by my staff for giving away too much because we want people to have fun with it and not be
Mm,
spoiled. But Hapu raids can go a lot of different ways.
mm,
Depending on the raid leader or who's in charge of the party, it could be a very organized ordeal, it could be an ambush. But essentially, we gather in our homeworlds, we prepare the raiding parties, then we'll go out to either random or predetermined locations, and we'll search for people that either interact with us in a specific way or that are very unique or special. Generally
mm,
speaking, we want people who are similar to us, but we have prerequisites before we're willing to go after someone.
mm.
So we want someone to interact. We want someone to be, not just interactive with us, but with other people. We want to see VR chat having fun and people actively interacting with not only people, but their surroundings, role playing. We love that kind of stuff. But there's too many ways they can go.
Mm. So what initially led you to becoming a Hapu yourself? Like, what led you to the community? What was the events like that made you want to go, I want to be a part of this?
So, in the early days of being a Hapu, I was originally converted around 2017, early 2018, so pretty early on for Hapus. Back then, you had essentially one community, Project H, and then slowly a few more popped up. But there were a lot of small friend groups of Hapus who had their own interpretations of how things were done. So I was in a Gaia night one time. I do have this recorded and posted on my YouTube, but it is privated right now. But I do have a video of when I was converted. It was, I think, Oh So Fancy, Raichu, and a couple others. But it was in Gaia night, and it was a funky time because I was an Abyssal and I didn't know what the fuck that was or what a Hapu was. So all these Hapus start crowding around me like, wait a minute, that's one of us. And I'm just over here like at the time I called myself the head pat man, right? Because I like to give head pats. It wasn't common back then. So I was going around interacting with everybody, and then I see these little anime girls, and I'm like, I'm gonna go head pat them. So I do that, and then okay, now there's two of them, and now there's three of them. And then there's like four or five Happus by the end of it. And back then, it wasn't like as organized or industrialized, so I didn't get converted for a long time. I think it took probably maybe a week or two, if not a lot longer, before I actually ever stepped into a Hapu avatar.
Mm.
But generally, how we define if someone is converted is if they swap into one of our avatars into a Hapu. But yeah, I was kidnapped by a friend group of Hapus in the early days. It was primarily Fancy, Pain, and a bunch of others, people who were pretty influential to our communities later on. But that was more or less my introduction. Eventually, I got introduced to I don't want to say the burgeoning, the new communities. That's the right word.
Mm.
But eventually, more Hapu groups sprung up, more communities, and I started getting involved a little bit more than just the friend group. Started hanging out, doing events, and over time, Hapus kind of came to a standstill. I don't want to say we weren't doing anything because groups were obviously doing stuff, but the Hapus like to do Hapu stuff. We like to raid. We like to create. We like to have fun and do jank. So, over time, as things kind of fizzled out, I wanted to do my own stuff. I wanted to make Hapus in the light that I thought they should be seen in, because I love them. They're pretty awesome, and they gave me so many cool memories and great times. So, you can thank people like Fancy and Pain for Hoppou Foundation realistically, because if they didn't convert me in the early days, well, we probably wouldn't have converted several thousand people by now.
Oh, wow. So you have several thousand members of the Hapu Foundation at this point.
Foundation has 6,000. APD is like, I think at six or 700. But total conversions, we've had to have done several times that number. Our main avatar world is at like, I think 250,000 visits.
Mm.
And that's not counting the other ones. But from getting people into the Discord standpoint, it's probably closer to around 8 to 9,000.
Wow. So may I ask you what have
Holy
been?
Christ.
That's a lot.
Think of it.
Well, it's counting
No
leads
shit, but
too, so you know.
yeah, but still, we have enough trouble just keeping up with a few 300 or 400 people. But God, oh God, my hair'd be grayer than what it is now. Trying to remember. Jeez, I'd have to write. No, man, never mind. Holy shit, I'm just trying. That many numbers just makes your brain want to melt. You're like, holy crap.
So what have been some of your favorite
Yeah.
raids you've either partook in or been the target of?
So, unfortunately, or fun fact, I don't know how I want to define this, but I've been raided by our community, other Hapu communities, probably hundreds of times now. So it's a little hard to pick a specific time that I've been raided, but we've done thousands, if not more, raids by now. I've hosted probably more than a couple hundred myself, if not several times that, because for the longest time I hosted the majority of them myself, at least in our
Hmm.
early years. So we had quite a few memorable interactions. Some of them we got recorded, some of them obviously we didn't. But a really memorable one was there's this fucking con. For whoever remembers cons, the little cute avatar that was made by Midori,
Yep.
or Midori, however you say their name. So this is like 2, 3 years ago, and they pique our interest. We're rating them. We're trying to get them in. And we end up spending 3 hours on this fucking con who absolutely refuses to come with us. He doesn't want to go through the portal. He doesn't want to come to the home world. He doesn't want to get converted. So we don't speak at this point. You know, we're happous. We poi occasionally, but we don't interact. So this guy basically sets the condition after 2 hours of trying to convert him that if we make him a con happou, he would convert. So one of our developers, it was Sophie, uh, they go into Blender mid-raid while they have their fucking VR headset on, and they whip up a Happou Con hybrid in the span of like 20 or 30 minutes. We give this motherfucker the avatar, and he said, no, I meant the other way around. Not a Happou Con, but a Con Happou. So we spent all that time trying to get this motherfucker converted. We catered to his whim. The one time we did it. And we didn't end up converting him in the end, and it was so fucking sad. But now we have a con happou. Let me see if I still have it? I do. Hold
A
on.
conpoo?
Conpoo, yeah. That's literally what it's
A con
called.
poo.
I don't know if the camera can see me, but this is like 2 or 3 years ago. But this is what we made for that guy, and he said it wasn't good enough. And I'm just sitting here like, we're still using this to this day, man. It is like one of the only con happou hybrids to stand the test of time. It's so cute. But I think another more fun time, we went after a loaf of bread, a piece of toast,
Yep.
for like, I think we went after this guy for like probably 4 or 5 hours. I don't think we got it recorded, but we were straight up trying to convert this dude for like a quarter of the day. We were chasing him around different worlds. He was having a blast. We were having a blast. Those kind of moments where you just get to have continuous fun. You're just fucking around in a world with a bunch of people doing your little role play while they play along. That's the kind of stuff that I love. I know those situations in specific aren't necessarily the most haha funny or like you know what I mean. But those are really memorable moments, especially compared nowadays. Like we have a lot of great moments still, but they were very different times. We got satisfaction out of doing very different things. And that's why I wanted to bring it up because like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, VR chat was very different from now. The
Mm.
public lobbies, the kind of people that you encounter, it's a very different environment. So
Mm.
while you do have similar kinds of interactions or situations play out still, you have much fewer and shorter interactions in comparison. That can be for a lot of reasons, but you don't have those 5 hour long raids anymore. You don't really have those kinds of situations. And then when client users became rampant, you really didn't have those kinds of situations play out. But I don't know. I could probably drum up a few more, but I think that's enough of
Mm,
that.
fair enough. You know, I think Raptor and I've only been raided once, and it was during PJKT with the Nox. I believe like one
That's
popped up and
fair.
it stood there quietly, then became 2, 3, 4, 8. I think it was 9 of them total. They just stood there, and eventually they all
Damn.
began speaking in not unison, but very coordinated between all of them through text bubbles. And I think they were trying to get her soul for a good solid 25 minutes. I think.
That's
It
fair.
was
I don't
interesting.
know. I don't know what Nox clans like deal is or what they do necessarily. They're not associated with us, but I know that they have their own style or take on the whole concept. But I've heard them do similar kinds of raids or events before where they utilize. I don't think it's bots. I wanted to originally assume it was bots. Maybe some of the accounts are or alts, but a decent amount of them are actual people as well.
Mm.
So I think it's kind of cool. It's interesting to see other groups and how they not only interpret Hapu but how their raids or activities go. So it's cool that you got to experience it. It's too
Mm.
bad you didn't get to got by us.
Well, I Raptor nor I never converted, so weren't really gotten yet. If that
Oh,
makes sense.
No, we're still freebasing.
understand freebasing. It's a very unique word that I don't think I've ever heard used before. But understandable. God bless. You might get kidnapped.
Okay, challenge accepted.
They don't know me too well. Challenge, yeah. Good luck. Good luck. Knowing what's sad is I think I have an avatar of one because somebody made me one way back. Yeah, that's what's sad.
Raptor might already be converted.
It
Zero
may have
effort
been.
I'm
conversion.
not
Let's go.
converted. I might have been and didn't even know it.
Congratulations. I think you're already converted way before this conversation even happened. So I have a question for you. You mentioned
Mm-hmm.
a different type of thing that you also do groups for. What is an abyssal, and how is that different from a hapu?
So the way that we interpret it, I'll go with that first. We kind of see abyssals as like the adult version of Hapu, even
Mm.
though realistically they're the exact same thing. Abyssals are the enemy in Kantai Collection. They're the
Mm.
enemy of the main characters or the antagonist. But yeah, abyssals, we generally just see them as the grown-up version of Hapu. That is our interpretation of it. They're like the general species of what we are. That's
Mm.
another way to look at it as well when you dig further into our lore. So generally, we would refer to ourselves as abyssals from a general standpoint, but since the lore side of things isn't as impactful as, say, a Hapu raid, we still are always going to generally refer to ourselves as Hapus, unless you're like a part of APD or another abyssal centric group that has the avatar styles in a more adult. When I say adult, I mean just proportionally speaking, they're taller and more built out. But yeah, that's generally the difference. But since Hapu isn't technically a thing in Kantai Collection, it's Northern Princess, who's from relatively obscure games in the series. Generally, you would just see Abyssals as the main antagonist to the protagonists in the series. In our
Mm.
case, they're just the species or the adult version of Hapu.
Okay. So you mentioned lore of hapu. May I ask what are some of the main lores for hapu, and what's some interesting ones that you like?
So lore is definitely subjective, as everybody's going to have their own interpretation of what is or isn't. Now, we've been working on our own interpretations, our own lore around Hapu and Abyssals for a long time. The majority of it isn't public yet, but there are some little tidbits here and there. One of the aspects that we've been going back and forth for a long time is what is the abyss? Because we mention the abyss a lot. The abyss is the home of the abyssals, so on and so forth. So for a long time, we were going back and forth on what that should actually be. Like, is it a physical place? Is it like a different dimension? Is it somewhere in the depths of, the ocean on Earth? But there were a lot of different ways that we could go at that. And what we ended up doing is settling on basically the abyss would be its own little pocket dimension. It'd be its own sort of, I don't want to say like a slice of real space, just
Mm.
sectioned off in its own little realm. But the way that we wanted it to work is we wanted our own space away from anything, both from a lore or roleplay perspective, that could interfere with what we do. But a lot of our leadership also like things like Dune and 40K. So essentially, the way that the Abyss works, it's its own little pocket dimension. I think a interpretation of how that would work. Have you ever seen Three Body Problem or read the books?
I have not.
I don't know if the
Would you mind
series.
explaining what
I
that
don't think
is?
the series got to that point. Three Body Problems is a Chinese series of books and multiple TV shows that goes into pretty interesting science fiction and billions, if not trillions, of years into the future. But there's a concept of essentially shielding yourself with a black hole.
Mm.
How that exactly works is a little fucking too much for me to even try to remember right now. But I wanted the concept to be somewhat similar to being able to shield ourselves into what is essentially an unpenetrable abyss. So we took that concept a little bit, and inside of the abyss, we have our different realms. Every leader has their own house. Now, how the house systems work, it's a little too complicated to explain, but with every leader having their own house, they would have their own realms, their own planets in the abyss that they could do various things with. That going in the terms of both roleplay and like personal house lore. But the Abyss works in a couple of different ways. You'll see Happous sometimes use like portals, especially in certain media. You'll
Mm.
see them like be recovered by portals or otherwise. We've been trying to somewhat introduce that into in-game and our lore as well, as a way of like, okay, you're critically damaged or you're about to fucking die. We should get you back to the Abyss or one of our, homes. And yeah, so the concept goes in a couple different directions. We want to do a little bit of sci-fi, and we want to do a little bit of medieval too. And it is a
Mm.
relatively grand concept. But that's why the community Abyssal Order exists. We've been slowly developing that to be kind of like our lore and roleplay, I guess, hub in that respect.
Mm.
But yeah, there's a lot to get into when it comes to the Abyss, how it works, how all of it works.
Hmm. So when
But yeah,
deciding how, well, actually, a bunch of questions. How much different is your interpretation from the original interpretation of what makes you different from the other groups?
I mean, the interpretation that we've developed over the years in comparison to like how Happus originally were is pretty drastically different. Sure, we
Mm.
follow the same like concepts from a general perspective. Like back in the day, they had their hunts and their different forms of raiding. We have a more organized and structured version of that. Um, but in general, when it comes to like how we're different from, say, one of the more recent communities versus one of the older ones, we're a lot more focused on, I guess you could say, the ideological concept of Happus, how we're supposed to actually be doing things. We're more upholdent in terms of our beliefs and how things should be. Other groups are more free flowing and free form in terms of, say, how they'll do a raid or how they'll interact as Happus. We have a more refined concept that we generally try to stick to a pretty high degree. But there are a couple other baselines that are pretty different too, outside of just, more organization and structure. From a lore perspective, the majority of communities don't have like full blown established lore. The
Mm.
majority of it is like Chinese whispers or like things that are passed down through generations, that kind of deal.
Mm.
That's generally how Happou lore and Happou history has gone pretty much since forever. But everybody's had their own interpretations on what a Happou is, how it works, how we do things. We kind of just put things more so in stone and tried to make everything a little bit more coherent. That way, anybody who is a happou, you know, things make sense. There's not like happous are supposed to be like this. Happous shouldn't be doing that. You know, it's not that we want to control everything or that we want to be the ones making those decisions. But when you encounter as many situations or as many things as we do, you kind of have to have a coherent structure. You kind of have to have like proper baselines to follow.
Mm.
So we went pretty hard in our procedures, our rules, how we want our raids to be, our activities to go. So like in general, say you're at a raid, say you're at one of our more roleplay centric events. I don't want to just say one of our events because you can be something other than a happou at a casual event. But if you're at a raid, you're going to be a happou. If you're at a more intensive roleplay event or otherwise, you're going to be an abyssal or a happou. But that kind of thing. We just wanted stuff to be more coherent. We wanted less conflict about how happou should be. And we had so many influences over the years of, you know, like say a specific instance is a happou named Fancy. We brought them up earlier. They were one of the largest influences for why we adopted people being able to poi over being completely silent because they did it so much and I liked it a lot. It was a cool aspect of their personal character.
Mm.
And other people, of course, did it at the time too, but it was so notable and it worked so well with what they did and it represented them as a person, but the character as well in a really unique way that not only influenced raids or specific situations, but it made the character, it made them, it really helped out. But there
Mm.
are a lot of situations like that that I can attribute to individuals or groups of individuals for both, say, lore and our culture and how certain activities are performed.
Mm. You know, now that you mentioned since you guys are the ones with happous that poi, I think throughout my time in VRChat, I've seen more happous that poi than happous that don't. To be quite honest.
Yeah, to be fair, like I think we didn't start the whole ploying thing, obviously, but when we kind of cemented that as this is what happous do, this is kind of like what's expected, everyone after us is gonna be doing it, or at least the majority of them do. It's
Mm.
one of those things that we had our influence on it, but once we started doing it, once other people started doing it, it kind of just picked off and it became a core element of what a happou is.
Hmm. So now that we now know what a happou is and an abyssal, since you explained what that is, I assume that the UPD or the abyssal or whatever is sort of related.
Yeah. So APD
APD.
is a more,
Sorry,
yeah,
APD.
APD is a more like, you're good. To be fair, when it comes to the abbreviations for like police communities, there's a shitload. There's fucking LPD, there's UPD, there's fucking MPD, there's like 10 others. There's Shield. There's too many, man. There's so many communities that use abbreviations, including us. It's really confusing. But Abyssal Police Division is like, I guess the best way to describe it is just happous doing police stuff. They're,
Hmm.
you know, janky little guys having fun, doing what they think officers do. There's a lot of different role plays for APD. They have several different branches. You have your actual officers, your constables, you have enforcers, you have detectives, you have medics, engineers, so on and so forth. There's a lot of stuff going on over there. They're more roleplay focused than Foundation. Foundation's main thing are happou raids and like typical in-game and Discord events, that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
APD wants to do more casual and what's a tier above casual? Not necessarily lighthearted, but they want to do roleplay and they want to do it in different ways. So they're allowed a lot more freedom than a happou raid. For
Hmm.
them, the way that we technically allow them to communicate in lore, we have these things called Steves. In Kantai, they have various names, like I think one is Hellcat Bomber, Hellcat Fighter, but they're the balls with the big ass mouths,
Hmm.
those things. So in our lore, we kind of use Steves for a lot of stuff, but one of the ways is as a translator. So they can actively communicate and talk to people around them. They can perform regular police activities. They can arrest people. They can talk to people. They can get into shenanigans and, well, talk back. Unlike, say, a Hapu raiding party who isn't going to interact, and you might just get a ploy. But they have a lot of different worlds. They've got a lot of different activities associated with the group itself outside of roleplay. They do typical events like Foundation as well. But a typical poi troll is a little hard to pin down, especially when there's so many different branches associated with the group. But we have our precinct, we have various worlds that we'll gather in. And it works kind of similar to a Hoppou raid in the sense that we all gather together, we get prepared, and then we'll go off into our various worlds as different groups, and we'll see what kind of interactions we can get. See if anybody out there is of interest to us to maybe become a new friend or be converted. But yeah, they do, pictures of arrests and various stuff like that.
Mm.
But I wouldn't say it's too comparable to any of the other police groups that are currently out there. We do some of the similar baselines that you would expect from like LPD or UPD. You get the idea, like, arresting people, go take their picture at a sign. The typical police stuff. There's a lot more to it than that when you start branching into the other aspects of the role play. Like enforcers, you could kind of think of them as like our special forces for the
Mm.
APD. Engineers are, well, engineers. And then medics are, well, medics. You get the idea, though.
Yeah, I get the idea. So, what led to the creation of APD? I have a lot more questions about it, but I'll start with what brought that out of Foundation and what you do.
So there were a couple of factors that made APD come into reality. We were already somewhat doing janky Hapu stuff as quote unquote police officers. Like early on, there were a handful of us who were Hapu officers just for fun that used it as a guise to, create roleplay situations.
Mm.
And over time, I guess that concept kind of fizzled out a little bit, and there were only a couple of us who'd really done it that were left. But early on in Foundation, one of our core members who did a whole lot of stuff for us, his name's Neko-san. He ended up creating our first avatar. He basically just handed us a functioning police avatar, police Hapu avatar. And I'd been active with various communities around that time, and I'd, done the janky side of the fun police roleplay for Hapus. I wanted to take the concept and turn it into something a little bigger than just, a group or two of Hapu officers going around and fucking around, having fun.
Mm.
So after he made the avatar, it was kind of like, I want to do something with this, man.
Mm.
So we started prototyping for a little while, and it took a hot minute. Don't get me wrong. It originally started as like, technically it was Hoppou Police Department, like way back when, but when we started doing stuff with it, it was Hoppou Foundation Police Department. Then we tried kind of fiddling around with some different names. Eventually we land on Abyssal Police Division. But APD as a concept is pretty different while still maintaining a lot of the same baselines as Foundation. And as for why the community itself was actually formed, Neko-san wanted to do Hapu police stuff, and so did I. I took the concept that he made, at least for the avatars, and I expanded on it pretty drastically. We did a bunch of stuff in the early days before we formed an actual community. We did cross-communal quote-unquote events. I don't know if we want to call them cross-communal events, but we did stuff with various police communities. We did stuff with the LPD quite a bit in the early days of pre-APD. It was a lot of fun, but the concept kind of just grew, and we had a lot of people who were really interested in doing a Hapu police officer roleplay.
Mm.
So we started the concept. We launched it with a staff team, a very small staff team, and one leader. We based a lot of the structure around their concept and vision, and we basically were like, hey, here's the baselines. Now do it. which was a not great idea. It took a while for APD to get its feet off the ground. We had to go through a couple of leaders and we had to go through a couple of teams to find the right mixture of, how is this going to work? How are we going to actually do this?
Mm,
Because once you get past a certain step, like a certain stage, you got to think of all the organizational shit, the rules, how you're actually going to be operating day to day, your internal procedures. So, over time, as the concept developed and we got a proper hold onto things, we eventually had fully fledged patrols, operations, a dedicated staff team, and leadership. It took a hot minute. It took a few years of pretty difficult work at certain stages,
mm,
but the concept evolved pretty drastically from what it originally was. It went through multiple name changes. It's had a couple of different leaders now,
mm,
but the person who primarily took charge and brought it out of the ground, most of it can be attributed to Crispy Chips in the early days, and then Lang for the majority of it after the fact, and then Zoe currently as they're the primary leader after Lang amicably stepped down.
mm.
So APD's had a pretty interesting history. It's had a handful of leaders. It's had quite a development history. But we were just Happous who wanted to do Happou stuff, but in a slightly different way. We like
Mm.
the idea of different roleplay, more roleplay. Happou rating is a roleplay in a sense, but it's not very interactive or intensive. It's not as entertaining or as engaging as being a little officer getting to have your janky fun. But
Mm.
yeah, there are various reasons why it came to be. But a lot of it can be attributed to just Neko-san and I wanting to do fucking police stuff.
So I've got a few questions as well. How does the APD, I got that right this time, how are their events
Yeah.
different from the other police department groups, and how does the APD connect to Foundation?
So, from a lore perspective, that's kind of a little funky to explain. We're not really going to get into that because
Okay.
the abyss and how all that connects. But how they connect their sister communities, you could kind of
Mm.
look at them like that. That's the way that we've always looked at them. APD and Hoppou Foundation are kind of like Foundation's kind of like the mother of all of our groups in a way,
Mm.
and they're all very closely connected. The staff teams, the members, usually there's a drastic overlap between them. But when it comes to, like, say, how they're different from, I don't even know how I would compare to other police groups, to be fair, because I haven't been active around any of them in a minute. But when it comes to like our constables, there are a lot of similar baselines to like the day-to-day operation of them going out into a world. The other role plays are going to be a lot more different, but we go into public worlds. That's not too different from say the LPD or the UPD. We take people, we have fun with them. We have relatively different rules, to be fair. How we actually go into an instance and interact with people is going to be pretty different from, say, how the LPD or the UPD or any other police group is going to interact. We give our officers a decent amount of freedom while also still trying to maintain, obviously, the role play that we want.
Mm.
But there are a lot of ways that you can go into a situation as one of our officers or a constable, whichever determination or name you want to call them by.
Mm.
But as for organizationally, like from a structure standpoint, the LPD, UPD, all those groups, from a structural standpoint, organizational standpoint, like how they operate, we are pretty fundamentally different from how the staff teams actually work. Same thing with how the officers themselves are trained or the procedures that we execute in world. While
Mm.
there are some similar baselines, obviously, since we do relatively similar concepts, at least when you actually apply them and go in the worlds.
Mm.
But you won't find too many similarities in terms of how we actually operate once we get into a world or how we operate organizationally or structurally. But, I don't know how I could go into the baselines without getting like super specific and being like, yeah, this community does this and we do it like this. And it's
No,
kind of funky. They do it like this. You know
I
what
don't,
I mean?
I don't want ultra specifics, but like, what are some examples you can give that would be different, like one or two, to give people like an
So I
idea?
guess the closest comparison, or not comparison, the the biggest difference between something like APD and say the LPD, how they're gonna be interacting in world with people, we're a lot jankier, man. Like Happus are just genuinely fucking chaotic balls of jank when they're not in a raid. Like we might be silent, quiet people, but obviously we'll be respectful and we won't be too crazy or chaotic. We won't want to disturb anybody. But our officers are gonna have janky fun in that world. And when I say janky fun, I mean you never know what the fuck they're gonna get into. You don't know if they're gonna be fucking beating someone around the corner because they didn't give them their candy or what kind of shit they get into. Now, obviously, every community can have similarities in the sense of, yeah, we're gonna go out and we're gonna do some fuck shit. But say our enforcers, they're relatively similar to a SWAT concept. They
Mm.
have quite a bit of advanced technology that might not be fair or might be overpowered. But the constable and enforcer concepts, you're going to find similar baselines to the other groups.
Okay.
At least from the aspect of constables, officers, they go out, they interact with the public. They're going to be the first face, or, well, depending on the situation, that you interact with.
Mm.
And how they're going to interact with you in a world is, it's going to be pretty unique. Happus are pretty special people. And how we execute, say, a patrol or one of our various other activities in world, I don't think it's too similar to anything that's outright established. Our officers have quite a bit of freedom. Our leaders have quite a bit of freedom in terms of how they want to execute their patrols. We have
Mm.
various different procedures, and I don't want to say scripts or whatever, but there's a lot of things that they can do in world to create a situation or a role play. As for how the communities are different, we have several different role plays that do quite a bit of stuff. I
Mm.
know other communities will have similar departments like say the constables and enforcers, that's just like your typical police officers and your SWAT just turned up to the max and a lot of cute jank. But then you have concepts like engineers which go harder into role play. Same with medics, which obviously there's some comparisons and baselines to be made, but how we actually execute our both roleplay events and situations. I'm trying not to be very specific. Please don't fucking kill me, Crispy. But when it comes to our communities, we're very secretive in general about how we operate, which is why I've been kind of tiptoeing around it. Like if you check Hoppou Foundation's wiki or APD's wiki, they're pretty bare bones in the perspective that we give you the general information of how it works. We might try to direct you in one way or another, but we don't want everybody to know how it works from a baseline. It's why I draw so many comparisons to other groups because realistically, we want you to actually interact with our patrols. We want you to experience what we have to offer and let you see us for who we are in that respect. If we give it all away on like a wiki page, or I tell you that the that the officers are going to do X, Y, Z in this fucking public world, it ruins all the fun. And it's the
Mm.
same thing with Happou rating. We get asked all the time, like, what the fuck is this? How does it work? And you'll see one of our leadership just give the most vague, fucking, like, generalized answer ever. Like, yeah, we're people. We do stuff together. Like, what do you even say?
Fair. All right. Well, without going any further into the police groups, you mentioned two others that you founded as well, like the Abyssal group that's in another platform entirely. Is that similar to Foundation
Yeah.
or an entirely other organization? And what platform? Hello, we're here to interrupt the most interesting thing being said in our current video to ask you a favor, which is, would you mind joining us at any of the socials we have, such as Discord? We're hanging out all the time playing video games, so you can catch us there very frequently. We have I run Twitter for us, which is LionTurtle21 on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. It'll always be Twitter. But either way, there's that. We also have a Patreon, which we actually have a whole other show for our Patreon members, which are Aliquum and the newest addition to the bunch, Future Oracle.
Niche and Forbidden Zero, good friends of ours.
Yeah, thank you very much, you guys, for joining. It means a whole lot that you're there,
Yes.
and hope to see you there as well. We have a whole other show. There are some free ones we have released as well for the audio for you to listen to and to see what it's like. It's like a whole other show as a thank you. With that said, please enjoy the rest of your podcast on YouTube.
Sorry, I just had to get a little bit more coffee in my blood. I'm starting to crash it a little bit. Those triple shots only last so long. My memory's like, yeah, gotta drink that shit. You're gonna die otherwise. Abyssal Order is not our first cross-platform community, but originally we had a project called Hoppou Foundation East for CVR, but we depreciated that a long time ago. Abyssal Order is our way to kind of support Massive Loop. That's the alternative platform. We wanted a way that we could expand our influence in a way to like potentially avoid, say VRChat one day dies or any of our host platforms just stop fucking existing for some reason. We wanted to spread Happous to more platforms, and Massive Loop, they're awesome people. They've been super kind to us, and we'd been interacting with them for a decent point before we decided we were going to form a community over there. But we needed somewhere that we could do various different kinds of role play and somewhere that we could also host our lore. Now, Abyssal Order is super fucking work in progress. We've been working on it off and on for a couple of years at this point, and we're still trying to get regular events going, regular activities going. But the concept is there. A lot of it's fleshed out, worked out, and we have a pretty sizable community. I think it's at like 200 members. So it's not the largest like Hapu project ever, but it's pretty cool. We've had a lot of fun over there getting to play test or, do bug hunts. But we wanted another place for Hapus to potentially call their home, as we're not exactly strangers to, being on other platforms. We like to experience what everybody has to offer, and, they were awesome. And they're from the same place I am. Massive Loop is from Oklahoma. It's where they're located. And I was born there. So there were a lot of connections, and we liked both the actual people behind the project and we liked the direction that it was going. But Abyssal Order, as a concept, is largely focused on our roleplay, focused around our lore. Concepts that are still so heavily in development, we've only done playtests, stuff like that. We have hosted regular events for certain periods of time over in Abyssal Order, but for the most part, a lot of it's dedicated to development or bug testing, play testing, getting the platform into a state that it's usable and playable for quite a bit more people. But yeah, Massive Loop's pretty cool, man. And so is fucking all the stuff that we've done over there. Abyssal Order is a concept, even though it's not like fully usable or fleshed out. Had a lot of fun with it. And I didn't mean to cut you off or
Oh,
continue.
no,
My
it's
bad.
okay. No, I was going to ask about Massive Loop. What is the platform and what is its comparison to VRChat? Is it another VR platform? What is it like?
So Massive Loop is pretty similar to VRChat in a lot of ways. Like it's a VR social platform. And fun fact, I'm their community ambassador. Don't ask me how that happened. It's a long story. But Massive Loop is relatively similar to VRChat in a couple of ways. There's quite a few differences as well. Like we have server systems, we have our own economy that's, a marketplace you can go to, a Patreon system that you can support servers or creators with. There's a whole bunch of unique features, like we've got apps, we call them apps. We've got a thing called director mode. It's fucking awesome, dude. So imagine like, say you're doing something like this, an interview series, and you need a bunch of different camera angles, and you need, say, local real-time lighting. Those are all things that you can do on it, and I think it makes video production pretty smooth, being able to easily set up a bunch of cameras, being able to fine-tune whatever settings you want. But there's a bunch of differences between the two. It'd be a little unfair to compare, but Massive Loop's a pretty cool place. It's got a lot of unique functionality. You can code in Lua or C Sharp, but yeah, it's been a pretty good time. I'd say it's still relatively early development, but it's definitely playable. We got a bunch of worlds, handful of servers, bunch of avatars, and like I said earlier on their community ambassador, what exactly that means, so I'm essentially serving as like, I don't want to say a pseudo community manager, but there are some overlaps in tasks. I'm basically the voice for the community and the bridge between the community and the company itself or the platform. I do
Hmm.
a lot of different stuff.
Hmm. So,
Maybe a little too much.
in a nutshell, if we were to have a conversation or reach out for a podcast to do with Massive Loop, it would be with you, correct?
Probably. To
Okay.
be entirely fair, like maybe one of the owners would also appear, but if you were to do a podcast with Massive Loop, there's a pretty high chance it would be with me.
Okay. Well, maybe one day when if Raptor and I can figure out how to get ourselves in there, we'd love to give it a shot and see what it's like.
I'd love to give you guys a tour. That'd be cool. That'd be sick. That'd definitely be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
It'd be a blast. I'd be in trouble almost the time. I cause enough chaos.
Hmm. You know, I kind of would love to see a Hapu version of you and on that platform. That'd be pretty funny.
Yeah, Captain Chaos Purple running around. Yeah, that'd have the big C on my back. Thanks,
The big C. What's the big C?
Captain Chaos.
Fair.
God damn it. That's fair. Like literally all I can say to that is fair. I don't know where I thought it was going because I thought it was going somewhere else
What
too.
the hell were you guys? Whoa! Whoa!
Oh,
Where the hell were
God.
your brains going here? Okay, boys and girls, they're getting weird
Unfortunately,
on me,
due
and
to
I'm supposed to be
YouTube's
the weird
current
one.
video rating system, I cannot answer that.
Okay. I think I caught on now. Okay, I'm stirred. Yeah, gotcha. A little slow this afternoon, but no problem.
It's a-okay.
Think I need some of his energy drink.
So how did Abyssal Order and Massive Loop even? How did you find out about it, and what made you want to make the decision to start a chapter over there?
Well, given our former involvement with Chill Out VR in its early days, we were kind of actively looking for a place to spread our wings a little bit and settle down another home. But they actually reached out to us. At the time, I'm pretty sure we were testing out like different forms of advertising. We don't do any kind of advertising, but we wanted to know how it worked. So they ended up finding us. I don't remember how, like, they found the server specifically, but they reached out and I'm like, this looks fucking sus as shit. Like, you get those random DMs fucking from like scammers or whatever. I'm like, it's not the first time someone's fucking like tried to say they're with a like social VR platform or a game company. So I look into it and I'm like, oh shit, it's an actual thing. So they ended up just reaching out to us. It was kind of out of nowhere. It was a little random, but we had been relatively active in a bunch of different spaces at that time. Like we'd been kind of playing around on different platforms and we'd been in a lot of different spaces where they could have seen us. So it's kind of funky to think about, but yeah.
So, what is it like being a community that is cross-platform? You're on different social VR platforms. Is it what is it like in terms of like running them, or think of yourself as a multi-platform community?
I mean, it's kind of weird to distinguish at times because Hoppou Foundation has been our like launchbed for everything, whether it's for VRChat or different platforms. Excuse me. That hit was like a long devastator. Oh my god. But it was one of those Will you ask me the question again? That hit fried my brain. I'm sorry.
It's a-okay. What is it like being a multi-platform community? Like in terms of like running it or think of yourself as that kind of thing? Is it easy to be in multiple platforms being the centrifuge of them all?
No, it's fucking hell. Trying to coordinate everything and keep track of all the different shit that's going on. I know Abyssal Order itself isn't a super active or super large group, but we've been actively developing for it for years, even if it's not super active in terms of like, hey, we're hosting an event every day or several times a week. It's very difficult to maintain multiple communities on one platform, but trying to keep a coherent structure or even development cycle is very difficult. As much as I love the concept of having that safety net of if one platform fails, hey, we have another one just in case. It's it's hard. It's really fucking hard. It's
Mm.
not something I can recommend.
Well, it is an interesting thing to think about, like just in case break glass kind of backup. Because I remember during EAC, a lot of people was like, "We're going to go to the other platforms because we want to be able to do mods and stuff." And to be honest, I didn't really see those other platforms people said they're going to really pan out. Because a lot of those people I know, it's like I'm going to chill out or I'm going to the Neos, and look
Yeah.
how those are going. They all came back. Neos isn't even a platform anymore.
Nope. Neos is a fucking can of worms that I'm not going to try to get into, but it's true. Same thing with CVR, man. Like, people flocked to them in the early
Jesus.
days. And it's really true. Like, CVR especially, it had the hype of, like, when EAC came out, they got a pretty big boost in their user base. It was big. People were straight up abandoning VR chat for a while. And obviously, pretty much everyone who wasn't just outright banned came back eventually. But I think it's very difficult for alternate VR platforms to come into a space that's been predominantly, well, dominated by a single entity. Obviously, there are a lot of VR social platforms out there that
Mm.
have similar levels of success to VR chat. Like, look at Rec Room. They get insane numbers. They have an insanely active and really cool community. There's a lot of other examples too, like Horizon Worlds, I know is funky for a lot of people, but they do have a large community and a large
Mm.
user base. But it's hard. Any platform that we've seen enter the space, I forget the exact number that we came to, but there have been several dozen VR social platforms, the majority of which you will never have heard of. The vast majority of them only lasting for maybe a year or two at most. Some built in Unreal Engine, some built in Unity. The examples that everybody know for the most part are going to be people that either made themselves known or, I mean, to like the Archet's community, or people who were directly involved with those projects that abandoned VR chat and made a big fuss about it. That's where a lot of those people came into, like CVR, Neos, and so on. But you never really hear anybody talk about like Rec Room. They're very different platforms dedicated to very different user bases, very different kinds of
Mm.
functionality, like how you interact with not only other people, but the actual games themselves. I think no matter what, it's hard for any kind of VR social platform to enter a space that has very established players already. I think
Mm.
anybody's going to struggle, and I still think it's awesome that, platforms like CVR, they're still around. They're still making a name for themselves, and they still
Mm.
have a user base and a following. Even if it's not tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, they still have their own awesome,
Mm.
dedicated communities that keep it a thriving game. I think it's
Yeah.
pretty cool to see where they've come.
Mm. I personally am excited to see other social platforms. Sorry, VR chat, but I like seeing competition. I enjoy watching multiple people
Exactly.
develop for the same thing because when you look at like I always use news companies, I hate using them, but when you have like one dominant company doing a thing, things stagnate drastically. It's like eating the same bowl of cereal every single day. Eventually, nothing really changes because there's no point. Who are you competing against yourself?
It's pretty true. I think competition is one of the most important aspects of anything
Mm.
involving human society. Like, advancement is almost entirely dependent on competition. We've seen it time and time again. Look at how war drastically impacts humanity's technological level as a whole.
Mm.
So I don't want to say war as in like other platforms, but I like the idea that there are multiple platforms that are developing in the same space, because not only does that kind of nudge everybody to be like, okay, maybe we should like really start going and getting things done. It's good for everybody when there are multiple players in the space. And I think there's room for everyone to succeed in their own niches,
Mm.
especially if you look at some of the smaller platforms that are lesser known. There have been a lot that are dedicated specifically towards companies or that kind of field, which you
Mm.
don't really hear about, but they happen, they exist. There are a lot of different takes on not only a social VR application, there are people who treat it like an actual social media, like, don't want to say Twitter or whatever, but there are so many different takes on the concept for what can be VR, social VR. I
Mm.
think it's great, and I think everybody deserves a fair chance. And you don't gotta shit on people either. I know there's a lot of like drama between platforms, especially early on when say like CVR or whatever came into existence. I think everybody's pretty much matured out these days. Like
Yeah.
everyone that I've interacted with has been pretty cool. Everyone's been chill no matter the platform that you're on. And nowadays, man, especially like this has to be the best time that there has ever been to be involved in VR. You have so
Mm.
many different options. You have so many different things that you can do, not only from a social aspect, but think about all of the real world aspects of how VR is being utilized right now. There
Mm.
are companies straight up using fucking virtual reality to perform, or, well, I guess more AR, but augmented reality to perform fucking surgeries using like full-blown scans of patients' fucking heads. Like I'll try to send you a video later, but there's so many different applications for virtual reality that would have never existed if it wasn't for the recent booms. Like VRChat itself, it kicked off an industry in a lot of ways if you really
Mm.
think about it. So many of these small startups or so many of these medical advancements or concepts, they largely have their roots in social platform concepts like what we're on right now. If it wasn't for, say, VRChat's early thrudging through the hell pits of early virtual reality, I genuinely don't know if a lot of these concepts would have been developed by this point. It could have been 5 or 10 years down the line that some of these technologies were being produced, but instead we have them now.
Mm.
And really, you can do anything with VR. There are companies using them for training fucking actual employees for real world tasks of varying degree, from simplest shit to like working on plane engines, dude. The applications for VR, AR, it's incredible right now.
I've
I know I went off tangent. I'm sorry.
Oh no, how terrible. We heard about things you enjoy talking
Oh,
about on a
oh
platform
wow. We
dedicated
have
to
a
talking.
tangent reader. Yeah, we got somebody going into a tangent, folks, and we just don't know how to deal with it. I do it all the time, so you're not
Yeah.
alone in this
Yeah,
situation.
don't apologize for tangents. We enjoy them because it allows us to get to know the guest better.
Mm.
What do you think about? What do you enjoy talking
Hell
about? And it
yeah.
allows
Mhm.
us into you. No.
God damn it.
No.
Where the fuck's my
What the
coffee?
hell's the no? I don't want
Don't
to
worry
know.
about it.
I don't want to know.
I'm not
'Cause
talking
he
to
won't
you,
know.
and I'm not
Yeah.
talking to him. I'm talking to the. I'm talking to you.
No.
Anyway, the
No.
last platform in which you've created, Knowles, I think you said it was Knoll. I'm sorry if I butchered that.
Oh yeah, so Fellowship of Null,
Yeah.
technically that concept more so belongs to the leader known as Titan, one of our
Mm.
leadership. He's the one who's been fully developing the concept, but it is an offshoot of our communities. I
Mm.
did technically found the original concept, even though he has expanded on it quite drastically.
Mm.
Fellowship of Null is a more cultish take on the Hapu concept. Like
Mm.
everybody says Hapus are a cult or culty because of how raids work or how we work from a public perception point of view.
Mm.
We like to be a little spooky. It's fun. But they take that concept and just run with it. They do a bunch of different activities, not too dissimilar from Foundation. They have their crusades, They're kind of like religious zealots in a way. That's a
Mm.
good way to think of Fellowship of Null. They're a more kind of culty, zealous, religious interpretation of happous. They follow this idea. We'll just go with the basic concept of Null. They have a bell that they worship and that they use. I'm not gonna explain that any further. Titan, please don't beat me. But yeah, they do a bunch of different activities in VRChat that are kind of magical and cultish in theme. They'll go into worlds not too dissimilar from a Happou raid. They'll perform their general activities. They also do more typical events. But there's some other stuff to go into with Fellowship, but to be entirely fair, they're actively working on a lot of stuff, so I don't know what I should talk about or what I shouldn't, because something I might bring up might not exist down the line by the time this comes out. But Fellowship does a lot of fun stuff. They do your typical in-game
Mm.
events. Sometimes they do Discord events. But the majority of what you can expect from them is a more cultish, kind of zealous raiding style. They have their own interpretation of how their happous fundamentally work, even though it is very similar to Foundation. And they follow a deity, which, to be fair, Foundation doesn't. Technically, the happous are a hive mind. The way that we communicate with each other is telepathically. So every community does things just a little bit differently. They have the same baselines for the most part, outside of APD, which, by the way, not to sideline us a little bit, but I did pull up the APD's public role list. I don't know what you want to call this, but let me go down that real
Of
quick so
course.
I can give people a more like coherent answer on how their structure works and how the rules work, because
Mm.
I know I can be a little wish-washy in terms of what they are and how they work.
Mm.
We're very secretive. I don't want to fucking like spill the beans. So the structure goes like this: Abyssal Emperor, the overarching leader and founder of the Abyss in all of our communities. The one and only Blazecreek, my dumbass. Admiral, the highest leader of the Abyssal Police Division. It's in charge of all community development, staff, day-to-day operations of the community. Vice admirals, they serve and answer directly to the admirals, basically performing all the same functions of admiralty, but as directed, prompted, and approved by the admirals. Abyssal Admiral refers to members of the leadership team for any of our communities. I just bring that up because it is on the role list. Our Watchers are the moderators of the community. That doesn't need explanation. Police Mentors are our trainers who lead the training sessions for regular Poitrollers who want to advance to Constable or beyond. Lieutenant are the event leaders of standard Poitrolls. They're responsible for choosing targets, starting/running interactions, performing and onboarding into the Discord server for new members. Then we got our Chaos Captains. They're event leaders in charge of chaos groups and chaos activities. They coordinate with other event leaders to assist interactions as needed during events. Say sometimes you go into a public world, there's not too much going on during an event. We have our own people who can, create a little bit of chaos. We also have morale officers. They're event leaders who run events not relating to police work or
Mm.
roleplay, including two, but not limited, games, world hops, hangouts. And, and then we've got our officers, members of the community who have proven themselves able to lead Poitrol parties during events. This role is eligible for advancement to lieutenant and commander. So the way the APD works, you could think of the APD as having multiple departments inside of the division. Every department acting not as its own community per se, but it has its own hierarchies and structures, or structure. Let's go for the next one. Special services. We have the enforcers. They're the super soldiers of the APD. I fucked it up. Known for their large size, higher aggression, and militaristic attitude, these heavy units are not to be trifled with. The Enforcer Department receives all of the latest in the APD's experimental technology, weapons, biological/mechanical augmentation, and metaphysical systems. Also, fun fact, our interpretation of Hapu, we are biomechanical. Anyway, moving on. We have our mages. They're specialists who observe, document, and study all of the magical phenomena encountered by the APD during our operations. They use this data to develop magical systems and artifacts that are of use to the APD. We also have our engineers, who are specialists that observe, document, and study all of the technology and mechanical devices encountered by the APD during our operations. They use this knowledge to develop new technologies and machinery for the APD, as well as repairing, upgrading, and increasing the efficiency of our pre-existing technology and machinery. And I go on because there's still a shitload more. Medics, specialists who observe, document, and study all of the biological abnormalities, diseases, and cybernetic augmentations encountered by the APD during our operations. They use their research to create new methods of biological augmentation, DNA editing, and surgical installation of cybernetics developed by the APD's engineers. Detective, crime scene specialists who are able to use various types of forensic technology and classic deduction to find the culprit of criminal activities encountered by the APD during our operations. And then these standard roles, or at least that's what they're titled, even though it's technically not accurate. Constable, member of the community who has been present in patrols significantly and have attended the APD's training program. This role is eligible for advancement to officer as well as enforcer. And then here's more. It's a lot more, but I think you get the idea. We have lore keepers, chaos creators, rookies, so on, so forth. The APD is hard as shit to talk about because there's a lot to talk about.
I see. And you also want to stay secretive, so I understand.
Yeah, that's all public. So I was like, I can pull it up and I can just say that stuff because it's all publicly accessible in our Discord server and the fandom Wikipedia for it. So I think that's better than my half-assed initial explanation. To be fair,
That's a-okay. So I have one question for you. Out of all your time with all these Happou communities you've created and partook in, what are some memories or moments that have stuck with you?
Fuck. You know, this is probably going to sound weird, but I'm legally ordained in the state of California. So this is somewhat topical. I've never actually performed a legal wedding. Let me just state that now. But I have performed so fucking many Happou weddings as the priest or the guy who's given away everyone. Is that what they're called? The priest? I can't remember. The ordained minister. But yeah, that's one of my favorite things because I've done it for, a couple hands. Is that what they're called? The priest? I can't remember well. And those are like Happou weddings. They're role play, obviously. It's not like they got married in VRchat, but it's symbolic in a lot of ways. It's a gathering of all of both of their friends. It's a gathering of our community to come together and celebrate those people. And it's some of my favorite moments as a community because we get to genuinely see these two people, whoever they may be in the instance, that genuinely care for each other enough to be publicly put on display in front of upwards of 80 to 100 people, depending on world size and who's watching. But it's one of those things where it's like you get to experience something that you really only kind of get from a real life, real wedding. The gathering of everybody's friends, all of the fucking awesome, cool memories said by guests or the bride and groom. I think that's probably one of my favorite, but other situations, I don't know. Like, so I know a lot of us remember VRCon, but during, I think it was the first VRCon, maybe the second, I don't remember. This is when the APD was still a part of Hoppou Foundation as an internal like test thing. We fucking went around with a bunch of people, a bunch of other groups. We were just having fun, hanging out, and excuse me, that fucking monster came back. So anyway,
My God.
fuck. We were going around VRCon with all these fucking groups, and, and this guy, this JFK from Call of Duty World at War comes by, And I don't know what fucking prompts me to just be like, we gotta play Protect the President. But we followed this random JFK, like this random dude. I don't know who he was. He's just some dude who joined the lobby. I don't think he was friends with anyone. And now he's got like 20 Hapu officers and a couple LPD officers and a couple other communities all escorting this guy, giving him a tour of VRCon. We're all like, protect Mr. President. We can't let anyone fucking get him. It was so fun, dude. I love that so much. Like, listen, VRCon, Project Fest, Project Community, those kinds of things, those festivals, we've had so many fun moments between our Happus and other communities or just random, players. I love so many of the instances where, like, say in the super early days of our community, we used to hang out with I think Mortesian Syndicate's now known as like Mortesian Kingdom or something like that. I
Mhm.
think it's Kingdom. We used to hang out with them a lot. So I would just randomly pop into their old like bar world with like 5 or 6 Happus, and we would just casually be chilling while the mafia is doing like mafia shit. Just see a bunch of Happus in the corner sitting at a table like, what the fuck is going on? And I loved doing that back then, man. It was so fun getting to just do janky Hapu stuff and apply it towards other people's role play. So many situations like that over the years played out that I can recall where, like think of a Hapu raiding party. This happened again recently, but we used to have fun with the LPD a lot where they would try to arrest one of us or something, and we may or may not take over their police department. And it's happened a lot. It's happened a whole lot. An SLRT team tried taking me in for stealing candy. This is about maybe a month ago now. We brought in like 3 patrols from APD, and fucking the SLRT team, dude, they took one look at the like 20, 25 people who just instantly came out of nowhere, and they're like, guys want head pats? We're good. They swap out of SLRT models. 2 of them turn into Happus. I love that stuff, man. I love those kinds of situations. Those moments are like my favorite. I love them.
Mm.
So good.
You know, there was one moment with the Hoppou Foundation I remembered at Fest that kind of amused me is during all of Fest, I wondered where all the grabbables went. And then one of the last days of Fest, I was hanging out with, I think it was you at the over at the Foundation booth, and then there's
Yeah.
one of your members grabbing the Raptor PNG, takes it, stuffs it in your booth. I was like, wait a minute. And I stick my head in your booth, and there is every single item from Fest sitting inside the Hoppou Foundation booth.
So I had to make an official statement to the Hapu Foundation about this. Our Fenix are maybe kleptomaniacs. They have a tendency to steal things.
The fucking ferrets. And worse than ferrets stealing fucking shiny objects out of your fucking car. Yeah, I got a ferret that runs around stealing my shit, and I can never find my car keys. And it's actually nobody's just playing this shit.
Dude,
Like,
that's too
but,
good.
You know,
but
there was
sit here.
oh,
Sit here listening to him about giving weddings and stuff like this. I had something that just popped in my head, and I started to giggle, and I'm going, wait a minute. Do they have lawyers? Do they have a judge? Just in case they get a divorce
Happou
and they have
court.
to go through court, Happou court for fucking a divorce court
We
and all
did
that kind of
have an
crap.
Abyssal court, dude.
Oh,
We actually
shit.
did.
Oh, my God. My God. I just thought I had to ask.
I say past tense for a reason, but we did have a fully fledged court world, artwork, and some other stuff. The reason that we don't have it anymore is the person who was primarily in charge of that team and that project had a pretty severe moderation situation happen internally. They got banned. We lost pretty much everything that was immediately in their control. So no more Hapu court. It was a fucking dope world. Like it was genuinely really cool, but we're not going to fight for ownership rights over it, even if it was, made for our community.
Mm.
It's one of those things where it's fun to do those role plays. It's fun to have those as options. But when we did have the Abyssal Court, you would be surprised at like how little it actually got used for those kind of role play situations. Whenever people wanted to do like divorce roleplay, there's this super old fucking world. I don't remember what it's called, but it's been around for like probably 6 or 7 years now. If you ever want to get a VR chat divorce, you go there. I can't remember the name of it, but it is like one of the oldest worlds in that category. They've got a bunch of like PNGs on the wall in a couple of rooms. I wish I could remember it, but the court was cool when we did have it. It was a very detailed world that was like a fully fledged court. It had statues of happous. It had a fully fleshed out courtroom, back areas. You could do full role plays in it, and we did.
Mm.
It's a concept that we might bring back again in the future. It'd be kind of fun. Just a lot of work, Stuff
Mm.
like that was hell on our development teams.
I think that'd be pretty cool for the APD. The APD goes out, arrests somebody, tells them you're gonna be this here, this day, this time. They come in with one happou that speaks like you, and there's a bunch of happous pointing at each other 10, 20 minutes. At the end, yeah, you're being arrested for murder. What? Don't know what the fuck's going on in the background. This constant poise.
That's played out a
I
few
missed it.
times, It has. Like, straight up, we've used the court when we still had it for that exact situation more than once.
Oh God! But like, can you imagine what it about to is when they steal shit? Who's arguing over what they stole? Well, I didn't steal that. I don't know what you're talking about. It was just nice and shiny, and I had to bury it in the backyard.
Exactly.
I had to hide it. I didn't want anybody seeing it. My
It's so
God.
true.
I do have to ask about the Phoenix. You said they're kleptomaniacs. Are they a separate type of happou? Because I saw them a lot in Fest, flying around, hanging on our booth, hanging over the LPD, hanging over the UPD. May I ask what they are?
So I'll diverge just a little bit for a second. You can think of happous as a lot of things. To be defined as a happou by our standard, for the most part, we just want you to have the head and the eyes.
Mm.
So that can mean a lot of things depending on your interpretation. Like there have been happous that are just an amalgamation of flesh and eyeballs on the floor. There have been a lot of interpretations of trying to play the line of what is or isn't. But Fenix are a subspecies in a way. We kind of look at happous and abyssals as, like I said earlier, biomechanical. A lot of our lore influence, while there's sure some sci-fi and like medieval elements to it, in the end, we're a biomechanical hive mind. Abyssals, in our mind, are, for the most part, in the majority of situations, going to be kind of similar to like, what's a good comparison? I don't want to say the Tyranids because that sounds a little weird, but they're a biomechanical hive mind, so it's somewhat comparable in that respect, I guess. But we have subspecies, and one of the aspects of our lore is we don't want to fuck with the environment, as in like damage it. We're very eco-friendly in that respect. So that doesn't exactly stop us from experimenting on, say, the abyssal depths that contain a shitload of weird looking fish. Like, we create our own materials, we create our own technology through a lot of means, and one of them is biological observation or study. And you could think of all of these subspecies as, I guess, a branch of that in a way. Happus like to be able to represent themselves in a lot of ways. There isn't really a reason to categorize a subspecies as like its whole big own thing when the biggest difference might be the size or it's got an extra set of ears or whatnot. But we've got a lot of subspecies. There's fucking there, I think the most popular ones are like mechas, phoenix. Trying to think, moths. Moths are probably, excuse me, the most popular of the sub bases outside of mechas and phoenix. But there's probably over maybe 15 or 20 quote unquote official subspecies. But there's a lot. If it's say like raptor, for instance, he's in a furry avatar. He could make like a hybrid of that into a happou. I wouldn't necessarily suggest doing that because it'd look fucking weird. Chopping the head off and putting a happou head on it would look so funky. But there's a lot of ways that you can do hybridization to make your own species or base. And even then, if you follow the baselines of like what would constitute, say, a mecha happou, you can still make it entirely your own despite fitting into a category. Yeah.
Thank you. So I take it, or with let's use the Phoenix because we're talking about them. Or were there any like
Yeah.
generalizations and personality types for people who would choose the Phoenix or each specific, other than being kleptomaniacs?
Fuck. Taking kleptomaniacs off the table right off the bat is fucked. No, it's like their biggest personality trait 90% of the time. They will
really?
steal your shit. They will take your kneecaps. They might even fucking eat you. Like Phoenix, they generally love ice cream. For some reason, a lot of them like spoons. In general, they like to steal kneecaps. It's kind of wild. There's a lot there, man.
I just thought that whole, the fact that the Phoenix and the Hoppou Foundation booth were hoarding everything. It took all of Fest for me to realize where they were going. Besides once, I think it was one of your members, Nightmare, who right after, it was that day actually, was trying to steal the Raptor PNG, but I figured out how to get it back by spamming the respawn button on our booth. And I took it back and he came back and we were fighting for it for like 10 minutes. He really wanted the object.
Funny or no?
Dude, I straight up, like, I felt really bad because it was happening all of Fest. And I told the happous at the beginning when I saw it happening, I'm like, if anybody asks for it back, give it to them without, like, question. And it got to the point where we were just fucking hoarding everybody's shit. And I'm like, why? What the fuck is the point of this? We had literally every item in the map, like, almost constantly. I felt so bad. I made an announcement in our, like, announcements channel. I put out a ping like, you guys not steal other people's shit? And if they ask for it back, you give it to them. And we did obviously give it back whenever prompted, but you're right. Like, it was, I think, 2 or 3 people. It wasn't that many who were actually actively doing it. But some of them were so dedicated that they were like on fucking 24/7 sometimes, just stealing people's shit from their booths. Like, what fucking demented little chaos creature would come up with this fucking idea to just go take everything from everyone during a convention, bro? It was so random. I felt so bad.
You know, I'm surprised that there wasn't like another happou that would try and sell the objects back, like the merchant from Resident Evil 4. You just kind of take all the objects, open up a jacket, and try and sell you your own object back to you.
We should have.
Oh, God.
I wish someone did that, dude. That would have been so fucking funny. I couldn't even be mad. Bro just walks up with like 20 or 30 things in a trench coat. I don't know how the fuck they're all attached. You want one? So good.
Jesus.
Here, you, Mr. LPD officer, need a box. I have one that says LPD on it right here.
I'm dead.
That'd be fucking
That would
crazy.
be hilarious.
Hilarious.
So doable too. It'd be so good. I hope. Listen, I hope someone fucking does that. If I forget and I don't have the like memory to be like, we got to do this one very specific fucking thing to mess with people, I hope someone does it. That would be so funny, dude. Oh
Well,
my
since it can
fucking
only
God.
hold 2 items each, you could just have an army of happous holding 2 items. And this one dude comes up and it's like, what would you like? Would you like a police box? A happou runs up and holds up 2 police boxes. Would you like a PNG? Another just holds up 2 random PNGs saying nothing.
Oh my God, dude. That'd be so good. Fucking, you got 10 little Happous all trying to sell you shit like they're fucking a horde of Khajiits from Skyrim trying to get rid of their wares. Throw it into the wrong fucking
Hey,
caravan.
hey, I stole this guy's I stole this guy's watch. You want it too? I just got it from him about an hour ago. Brand
You know,
new, still running, still ticking. $10.
the funny thing is, during
I'm
Fest, Raph and
dead.
I talked about next year's Fest to just increase the amount of PNGs our booth has to the max, just so people can steal them, and then putting our logo at the back
Steals
of
the
them.
shit out
So
of 'em.
as you see the raptor or lion PNG going
My
across,
God.
you just see the Metaverse Degen thing in the back and another PNG just going somewhere. We'll put a respawn loop, so they'll have to come back after like 10 minutes. They'll
Dude, that
pop
would
back.
be so good.
And I'll use your Fennec Hapu as this advertisement, because they'll have to come back, grab
God
the
damn it.
PNG, and then they'll hold up the PNG as they run back to the booth with the logo on the back of it, running back every 10 minutes like like an airplane ad.
This motherfucker is turning Phoenix into like carrier pigeons. The fucking like advertisement playing version of goddamn carrier pigeons. What the fuck?
And the funny
Like the
thing is,
seagull
the
chase.
Hapus will take them
The
every 10 minutes.
You're not wrong. They would. Straight up, someone would.
I know they would. So
I like
it's a
this-
really good way to use
I like this-
the Phoenix natural tendencies.
You're not wrong. I hate that. You're not wrong.
It's fucking hilarious. Like the goddamn seagull that was running around. She had the
That was one of the Phoenix
LPD
Raptor.
sign running.
That was
fly.
one of the Phoenix.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting. I know, but it was just funny. We just sat there and watched, sat there at the booth going, well, today at the beginning of this, well, we didn't know what was going to go on. All of a sudden, you just see all these police officers chasing this goddamn seagull for fucking nearly 30 minutes trying to get their sign back. We're over here just losing their shit. Just all of a sudden, it's going the other way now, going around their opposite direction. Well, it was freaking hilarious. And I'm going, wow, I wonder what they're going to do with it once. And we just looked at it. Hell if I know, because we didn't know what the hell was going on. It was the
funny
first
thing
day.
is, there was another time after you went for coffee where the same Fennec and the Seagull avatar took the police box, and I see the police box go by with a bird attached to it. And then there's the LPD officers, and then UPD officers. And then there's Daleks chasing that. Like, what is going on? What has the seagull done to get like 3 to 4 different communities chasing it around Fest?
He's his ass. I missed that. I'm going to laugh my ass
So
off.
good, dude. This is so good. I swear to God, I remember exactly what you're talking about. I swear to fuck I was there, unless it was a different time. Because I remember seeing a fucking Fennec being chased by the LPD, UPD, and I think it was the Daleks too. Dude, the kind of like cross-communal interactions that we would get from fucking Project Fest or any other similar convention, you get the most wild fucking interactions. Like, who expects Happous and Daleks or Happous and fucking like police officers to just be fucking around having fun? There were so many good moments like that.
Lion, who was the person that kept coming to our booth and he'd hide shit over there? He'd steal it from the LPD, stuff it over in our corner, and he'd go, shh. And who was that? I can't remember his name.
Oh, we've had him.
He'd sit there BS with us and yeah, we had him on. And
I don't know who you're talking
It's
about.
just a-
I know who you're talking about. I don't know their name, but they were a Fennec that spoke that was on desktop, if that helps you remember. They sat at your booth very regularly.
Fuck. That could be a lot of people still. Shit.
They were a furry Fennec. They
Yeah,
sat.
that could still.
They
be
were
a lot
there
of
in the
people.
morning.
They were there. There were 3 people there in the morning. I think Voidro was there at one point. I know Nightmare was there off and on. Who else was there? I think Smallrug was there for a little bit. There were like maybe around 10 people off and on that were like consistently there, not counting all the people
The
who
funny-
were coming in and out. So I'm not sure.
I wish I remembered. I know I added them as a friend. You know, one of these days I'll come back to this video regularly and check the description, because if I remember and see your face, you're going to get put in the description just so future Lion will remember, because I have a terrible memory. There's been a lot of
But it was
times during
funny. He was
Fest.
always stuffing shit in our booth. It was so funny because he'd sit there and go, shh. And I'd go, okay. And everything else like this. The LPD'd come over. Have you seen our sign? I don't know what you're talking about. And it was stuffed in our regular billboard sign. He stuffed it in there every time he took it when they were there. Then all of a sudden he'd notice that it was coast is clear, and he'd grab that and small and run with it. I'm just sitting there losing my shit. It was a way to wake up in the morning with a coffee, but it was so fucking hilarious. Wow.
It sounds pretty good.
Well,
Fuck.
Well, Blaze, thank you very much for coming on and letting us get to know you, all the foundations and everything like that. It's much appreciated getting to know you. So thank you very much. It's very much appreciated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on. It's been a good time. I promise any community that I've brought up in conversation or passing, I love every community that I've brought up. I've interacted with pretty much all of them pretty consistently. So plenty of love to you guys. Lots of love to the LPD. We've had a lot of fun with everyone. But thanks for having me on. I've had a good time getting to sit here and just talk about stuff. It's pretty good, man. I like doing it. It's been cool talking to you both. It's been cool getting to talk about the communities a little bit and the community in a more broad perspective of VR and VR chat. But thanks again.
No problem. If the audience wishes to reach out and find you or any of the communities you're part of, where can they find you?
Generally, for the communities, we would want people to be rated. So, I mean, just play VR chat or play Massive Loop, and you'll eventually encounter us in one of the public worlds. As for, well, my social medias, I think just about everything is under either Blazecreek, or for Twitter, it's, I think, the Young Blazer. But yeah, when it comes to me, I don't do very much on social media or anything like that. Most of my focus is communities and Massive Loop. But, you know.
Okay. Well, everything that he mentioned will be in the description, although it won't be much. Like a lot of the answers will probably be very vague and lead you nowhere, but that's okay.
You're not wrong. Gonna lead you in a fucking circle, bro. Gonna take you to a completely different person, completely different group. That'd be so funny. Oh my god.
Boy.
Well, check the description. And for a question for you, the audience, if you've ever been in any of the VR platforms and seen a happou, tell us about your experience. I'd love to read about it in the comment section. And Raptor, you know the thing.
No matter what, folks, if you're in here running around and having a good old time and you bump heads with a happou and everything else like this, just remember one thing. They might stare at you for a long, long time and drive you nuts, but just wave at them. They might wave back. We'll talk to you later. Bye, folks.